I never imagined grief would be the place where my marriage finally died. My name is Daniel Harper. I am 43, and until last winter, I believed loyalty still meant something. My wife, Eleanor, and I had been married for 16 years. Not perfect years, but steady ones. We paid our bills, hosted holidays, showed up to funerals when life demanded quiet respect. That funeral was for a colleague of hers, a man I barely knew. I wore a black coat, shook hands, stood beside her while people whispered condolences. Somewhere between the hymns and the awkward silence, she met him. His name was Owen Blake. Tall, soft-spoken, the kind of man who looked like he understood sadness because he practiced it. I noticed them talking near the coffee urns. I did not think much of it. Funerals make strangers honest. They bond people for a moment and then release them back into their lives. Or so I thought. After that day, Eleanor started changing in small ways. Her phone never left her hand. She smiled at messages she did not share. She stayed out longer after work, always with a reasonable explanation prepared. I did what men like me are taught to do. I trusted. I stayed calm. I told myself not to be insecure. Weeks passed, then months. The distance grew. Touch became rare, then uncomfortable. When I asked if something was wrong, she told me I was imagining things. She said grief affects people differently. She said Owen was just someone who understood what she was going through. I wanted to believe her because believing her was easier than admitting what my instincts were already screaming. The truth came to me on an ordinary Tuesday. I came home early because a client canceled. Her car was not in the driveway. That was normal. What was not normal was the unfamiliar sedan parked 2 houses down. Something told me to wait. I sat in my car for almost an hour, engine off, watching my own front door like it belonged to someone else. When Eleanor finally arrived, she was not alone. Owen stepped out beside her. They kissed, casually, comfortably, like people who had practiced not being seen. I did not confront them. I did not shout. I watched until he drove away. Then I went inside and sat at the kitchen table. Eleanor came in 10 minutes later, still adjusting her coat, still wearing the face she used for me. When she saw me, her expression froze. I asked her one question. How long? She did not deny it. She said it started after the funeral. She said it was not planned. She said she felt alive again. I listened, quietly, while something settled inside me. That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, she cried and asked for time. She said it was confusing. I told her I understood. And I meant it. I understood everything now. Over the next few weeks, I became observant instead of emotional. I noticed patterns. I noted accounts. I reread old conversations. I prepared. Revenge is not loud when it is done right. It is patient. It looks like acceptance. Eleanor believed I was broken. She believed I would beg or rage or collapse. Instead, I became efficient. Our finances had always been organized in my name. Not hidden, just managed. I stopped covering her expenses quietly. I redirected my income. I met with a solicitor and learned my options. I gathered evidence, not to punish her publicly, but to protect myself privately. All the while, she continued seeing Owen, convinced I was too numb to notice. The day I acted was simple. I waited until she left for a weekend trip she said was with friends. I packed my things, not in anger, but with clarity. I left the house spotless. I left a single envelope on the counter. Inside were copies of the documents she needed to understand what was happening. Divorce papers, account statements, a short note. It said, I know about Owen. I wish you well. Do not contact me directly again. I moved into a small flat across town. Quiet, clean, mine. When Eleanor realized what I had done, she called repeatedly. I did not answer. Her messages shifted from apology to anger to panic. Owen, it turned out, enjoyed the excitement of secrecy, not the responsibility of a real relationship. When my absence became permanent, his interest faded. That was not my goal, but it was not surprising. The revenge was not ruining her life. It was refusing to be part of it anymore. I did not confront Owen. I did not explain myself to mutual friends. I simply removed my presence, my support, my silence. Eleanor eventually sent one last message asking how I could be so cold. I never replied. Coldness implies cruelty. What I felt was peace. People assume revenge has to be dramatic. They imagine shouting matches and public humiliation. But the most effective revenge is dignity. It is choosing yourself without needing the other person to understand. I did not win anything tangible. I lost a marriage. I lost a future I had planned. But I gained something I had not felt in years. Self-respect. That funeral introduced my wife to another man. It introduced me to the truth. And once you see that clearly, walking away is not punishment. It is survival. Months later, when people ask how I am doing, I tell them the truth. I am steady. I work. I sleep well. I no longer question my worth. I learned that betrayal does not always arrive with chaos. Sometimes it comes quietly, dressed as understanding, asking for patience while taking everything. I do not hate Eleanor, and I do not thank her either. I simply acknowledge that some endings are necessary, even when they begin at funerals. I carry that lesson forward, silently, without bitterness, and without looking back again.